This episode of The Ride is brought to you by Purina Animal Nutrition. The PhD equine nutritionists at Purina Animal Nutrition tackle problems using science, and their love of horses keeps them at it until they get it right. Even with the most established feeds, they keep innovating. Even when it takes years of research, they don't stop until it's right. They are dedicated to the scientific method, but it can't capture the feeling of seeing a horse reach their full potential. It takes science and love to help your horse live their best life. Put their research to the test at horseinnovation.com.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of The Ride. This is Nichole Jericho. I am here with my co-host Jillian Sinclair, and today we have Keith Ceddia on the podcast, who is a reining trainer. You guys might be familiar with him if you are on our Horse and Rider On Demand platform. He just came out with a mini series when we were in his area filming something for our Horse Week, which happened last year, and he was kind enough to do some training content with us while we were there. So we wanted to have him onto the podcast so everybody could kind of get to know him a little bit better. Thanks, Keith, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So typically when we get started on these podcasts, we kind of go back to the beginning and kind of learn a little bit about you and how you got involved with horses in the first place.
Sure. So actually, I grew up in the city, but my brother was the one that got interested in the horses. He started taking lessons at a farm run by Ollie Griffith called Autumn Rose Farms. Ollie is really involved with the NRHA and the Judges Committee for years, and he's also the coach of the Ohio State equestrian team, as well as called many NRHA world champions. So really, I just got my start at a lesson barn. You know, we'd take a weekly lesson growing up, and then as we got older, my brother was going into middle school, and I was in early elementary school. My parents decided to give us the opportunity to move out to a family-sized farm, and that's where we got going with horses. We did the 4-H thing and kind of competed mostly local, that sort of stuff. We would go, you know, we're north of Columbus, Ohio, so we went to the Horse Congress and all that. Really, when I got into high school, towards the end of high school, I got pretty competitive in the NRHA. I hauled for my first world title when I was a junior in high school and finished second that year, joined the NRHYA. I was the treasurer for the NRHYA for 2 years there and just kind of enjoyed the youth competition. Riding, growing up with Ollie Griffith, and it was a pretty natural transition to go to Ohio State and ride for the equestrian team there. So that was kind of what I did. Kind of sold my reining horse, did the college life and showed with the team, and, you know, couldn't afford to keep showing. And I had decided at that time, you know, that's when I kind of decided I wanted to go into this as a career. So got back into showing at the tail end of college, and the NRHA hauled for a world title and was fortunate enough to win the Rookie Pro and second in the Limited Open on a horse that year. Before I started going out working for guys, I worked for Jared LeClaire out in Texas, and after Jared, I came back to Ohio and worked for Sean Flaherty for a good 3 years or so with him before starting out on our own business.
I always love talking to people from Ohio when it comes to the reining because, you know, for the people that don't realize this, the reining was born in Ohio. It was started in Ohio. That is where all the OGs live. That is, you know, where you saw all the big events happening at first, whether it was at the Quarter Horse Congress or I believe the fraternity took place in Ohio before it finally made its way to Oklahoma City. So it's always, I really love learning about the history of the sport. And I think you have such a strong connection to the reining industry just being in Ohio. I mean, let alone working with, you know, Ollie, like you said, who has been a really big part of reining for a long time. And then, I mean, I think everybody knows Sean Flaherty's name. You know, if you don't, you're probably not riding any kind of Western horse. I think we've all seen Flaherty. So that's really cool. I mean, do you sense, like, do you kind of feel connected to that, like, start of it being around all of these people who were part of, like, kind of the growing part of NRHA before it became what it was today?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I really appreciate the history going on. Even like, some of our competitions are up at the University of Findlay Western Farm. I'm on the board for the Central Ohio Reining Horse Association. That's where we host our shows up there. That's Dale Wilkinson's old farm. Clark Bradley, who just passed away, he was there for years. There's a number of really fundamental trainers that have come from that farm or been somewhat tied to that place. I enjoy hearing the history of where our sport has come from and just kind of looking at where it's evolved to. And it's pretty cool. I know a lot of our sports kind of migrated west and south, but Ohio's still a pretty darn strong niche of reiners up here. There's a lot of good, strong reining shows up in this area. Like you said, Congress for sure. Seeing that with its rises and falls, I mean, it went downhill for a while, and they vamped it back up in the reining portion of it and got a strong show again. We've had some other shows. The Buckeye Reining Series has been a strong one for a while. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm very fortunate and blessed to be in a state that there's, and even from clientele, there's a ton of clientele to go around. None of us are kind of scrambling through the same owners. We all got enough, like every trainer I talk to right now is full. So that's a blessing. And I do a lot of lessons. I can't tell you how many people want to come learn to ride a reiner. So that's one of the coolest things.
I've got a totally sidebar question that doesn't go with anything that we're kind of talking about, but do you find that you're getting more people because of Yellowstone? Are you finding that people are watching like the reining stuff, whether it's The Last Cowboy, Yellowstone, The Run for a Million, whatever? Are you finding that there's more like excitement around like, I want to ride a reiner?
So yeah, that's a good question. I think I get some for sure. Not as much as you might think, but it's more when you're discussing horse prices and the going rate in the industry right now. You hear the trickle down effect. And shoot, I had a customer just bought a horse and she's at the bank just yesterday and she, how they question you when you take out that amount of money. And she told me the bank teller went off. I watched Yellowstone and started going off in that direction. So there's definitely some of that.
I'm at a boarding barn. I have a little 2-year-old reiner that I just started, and I'm at a boarding barn, and all the girls, they're like, wait, what are you going to do with her? I'm like, well, the reining. And they're like, what's that? And I'm like, do you watch Yellowstone? They're like, oh my God, yes, you do the stopping. And I'm like, yup.
At least it's helping kind of normalize the things that we do. And, the bank teller probably didn't think she was as crazy for taking out that much money to buy a horse. Like normally we get the crazy looks. But so you obviously have such a strong background in the reining and just horses in general. When you said that your family moved out to a farm in Ohio when you were a kid. So did you have any horses there that you kind of grew up with that helped you, start your career, start your passion for the horse industry? Any special ones that come to mind?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so when I got started, I had a Western Pleasure all around horse, and so we kind of did that direction, which was definitely very helpful for what part of my business with the YEDA group which is the high school version of like the IHSA, or one of the organizations. There's a few, I believe, but so it helped me get a foundation in that direction. But so that horse for sure. I mean, I can't say how many hours I spent out on that horse, and my mom would stand out there patiently drilling through. She's not a horse person, but she sat through many lessons and would coach and kind of just, say, hey, look, you need to sit up straighter. That circle was not round, all that stuff. And she'd do that for hours with me. And then my brother got into and I enjoyed it. And I always got the hand-me-down horses. So my horse, by the time I got my first horse, that was when I was I think I was going into my junior year in high school, was the first time I got my own first horse. He was a cool dude named Southwest Wiz. We bought him off of the Bradleys, and Bill Bradley, who was the former president of NRHA, passed away several years ago now. And that horse was trained up by Dwayne Latimer. And that was a cool horse. Hauled him around for the youth title. Definitely gave me a boost of confidence, And it's funny how winning cultivates interest and drive.
No doubt about that. And it's always really nice when you You know, you mentioned your first horse was trained by, you know, Dwayne Latimer and all. I mean, like, so it obviously came with a really great background and knew what it was doing. And I think that also really helps a rider. I know not everybody's fortunate enough to have a horse that knows what they're doing and can compete at that level that you were wanting to compete at. But I truly believe that those horses that can teach you how to show, you know, it's so valuable in the long run instead of having to like kind of both learn at the same time. You know, you have that horse that you can rely on and to take care of you when you get into a bad situation.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, you know, I do a ton of non-pro coaching. So I got my high school kids, and then I have my non-pros that I take to the NRHA. And I'll tell you, you know, they say practice makes perfect, and I'd say that's a false statement. It's perfect practice makes perfect. And it also goes the same way with confidence as well as experience. Not all experience is good experience. You know, I have some riders that have some terribly bad habits or fears or anxieties or, you know, areas that they have to overcome, and it makes trusting a horse very difficult when you're used to an animal who's going to pull a fast one on you. One that you say, whoa, and he keeps on going, or one that just runs off on his own, you know. So you know, all those horses, you know, of different qualities are difficult, but I'll tell you that you can learn some good from them. But as long as you can compartmentalize the emotional and the confidence level and all that, and not bring your baggage from an old horse to a new horse. And that's difficult. That's difficult. And to take all emotion out and be 100% fair for the day, for the animal that you're sitting.
I think that's a really good point, what you said, and that's kind of something I've never thought about, but you really do, the experiences you get from the bad experiences are almost more beneficial than the good ones. I mean, I've certainly learned so much from the horses that, you know, just tote you around and do their job and all of that. But then when I think back on things that I've learned, it's pretty much always from a bad experience, not necessarily like bad, but, you know, just something that makes you realize that what I was doing wasn't working and things like that. But so you showed IHSA in college, which I also did. I down in Florida, and then you coach a YEDA team. So what do you think about the catch riding? You know, sometimes, like, how do you coach your kids through a bad draw, or, you know, when they don't always have the best horse and they might have one of those bad experiences?
Yeah, for sure. So that's the name of the game. I mean, as much as we like to say the luck of the draw doesn't matter, it does matter. Now, getting onto the judging of a catch ride scenario is a whole different topic, because I don't think every judge that judges it or understands the fact that you're supposed to pick the best rider and look through the horse and all that sort of thing. So sometimes it's really difficult for me to tell my riders they didn't get paid for the job they did, or on the other side, hey, you got lucky you sat on the best horse because you didn't outride, this other kid outrode you or whatever. But the biggest thing I talk about, and I'm actually kind of cool, I'm doing a clinic up here at our next YEDA show. Like, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and we're going to pull out all the horses that day that were bad or tough. And I want to try to ride them through the patterns and be mic'd up. So I can say, right now I feel this, I'm reading this. But the biggest thing about catch riding, in my opinion, is being first reading your animal's emotion, keeping your animal balanced or in frame, which I believe goes with any horse competition whatsoever. But if you can recognize the small tendencies of that animal prior to them blowing up, when do I need to just try to get safe and get through the maneuver, and then when can I show this sucker and try to go out there and win the class? A hard one for the kids, like I see it all the time, is they start in stage one where I'm going to go to win the class, and they go out there and they put their all and it blows up on them somewhere. And then they go from there and they learn how to go back and be correct. They tone it down. They just get it correct. And then they're coming in third and fourth place all the time. And then they struggle with the next step, is how to go out there and lay down a pattern that's going to win it. And so knowing your animal, or knowing the signs, when can I try to quest this maneuver? When do I need to just zero it? Hey, maybe a -1/2 is the best this animal's capable of, but take my -1/2 and don't try to win it or blow it up to a -1 or whatever.
I think another really interesting part about this organization is your riders don't have to own horses in order to participate in it, which I think is really huge because not everybody can afford a horse, especially kids who are just wanting to get started and they want to learn and they want to get that education. What's that been like working with people who don't own their own horses? And you're getting all levels of riders. I mean, you're getting the beginners to the people that are competing in the more advanced classes. What's that been like coaching kids who are on a different horse every time they're riding?
Yeah, that part there is very interesting, and you can take a lot for granted. Even simple horsemanship things that you would think, you should be able to kind of read safety tips, just the handling of the animal on the ground. Sometimes when you're brought up in just a lesson barn where those animals are as close to dead broke as you can possibly get, you don't realize the potential of the danger of a 1,000-pound animal that you're working with. And so I see that sometimes from the ground, the handling, the setup of the animal. So I sometimes find myself having to reevaluate riders and be like, oh wait, that rider needs to understand this simple thing before they can take on some more of the difficult concepts. Like, I think it's easier to read them, or not easier, but I think a rider should first learn how to read them on the ground before you can truly get a good read for them from up top. It is a great avenue for a lot of riders, because I do have kids that live in the city. I have kids that, lower income. I have riders, who have always wanted to do horses. COVID was kind of a blessing in disguise for the horse industry from that avenue. I have several kids that, hey, I've always wanted to ride a horse, but I was in lacrosse or, whatever, basketball, whatever. And they finally got time to come ride a horse, so that was kind of cool. I got a good influx there. And it's good for those kids to interact with the kids that are showing in the circuits. Our upper level kids, most of them are showing NRHA, AQHA. They're out there competing big time. And it's a good opportunity for them to learn from each other and kind of pick up and help each other. Even just learning the horse etiquette we were talking about earlier, about why you need to hold on to the lead rope, and not be on your phone or whatever when the horse isn't acting good. So stuff like that is very, very beneficial. Yeah.
I can only imagine what you were just saying. Like I said, I'm at a boarding barn, and the girls that own it, they come from the horse show world. And one of them, I know the people that she trained with, and I have a lot of respect for what she's done. But they do a lot of lessons now. And one of the kids, literally, they were going to pick the feet, and she sat down cross-legged to pick the feet and I was just like, oh my God. And she's like, no, we can't do that, because what if the horse puts its foot down? And yeah, you forget that not everybody knows the basics of like why you have to hold a lead rope, or why you don't sit cross-legged on the ground while you're picking a horse's back foot, or any foot for that matter. But it's a really interesting concept. And I'm sure you get people of all walks of life.
I do. And I don't know about all the coaches, but I know a lot of the coaches kind of just have more of a straight up lesson business, and they got more broke older animals, but that's just part of my business. I do a ton of stuff with the NRHA, so I got 2-year-olds in there, I got colts, I got fillies, I got I got all levels of horses. So I try to keep them all on one end of the barn and all on the other end of the barn, kind of little things like I got do not pet signs on my 2-year-old studs, not because they're mean, but we all know what dangers could come, and some of these younger kids, and most of my riders are middle school and older. I'm not really set up for too much on the elementary and younger side, but if you don't know any better, you go down there and you pet one of those colts, and that's how you get hurt. So liability is a big thing, and that's part of our lesson horses and show horses with those organizations. We can't afford lawsuits, so every animal we bring, we hope, is a dead, broke, quiet horse, but everybody's got a bad day or even just an accident, something can scare them, it can be anything.
I bet that your 2-year-olds get really broke really fast. I know mine is, because I have to steer in between people on a 2-year-old while they're doing these lessons and they don't even know how to trot and they're turning into a circle because they don't know how to turn or steer. And mine's learning really fast how to steer.
Sure. Although I will say I ride my horses in the morning and then teach in the evening. So I do put a little separation in there.
That's funny. My sister, actually, she trains all around horses down here in Florida, but she coaches a YEDA team also and an NRHA team. And she does very similar things where she gets all of her training horses done in the morning, and then the afternoons and evenings are for the more broke ones. But a lot of times, when she has ones that are good green horses, she'll throw a kid that's ready for that kind of a horse on one just so that they get that experience. Because, at a YEDA show, you never know what you're going to get. They try to get the best horses they can, but, it's hard to get people to just bring their nice horse and let these kids that they've never met before ride them. So when you go to shows, do you often bring your horses, or, do you have a nice group that you bring with you, or are they mostly other schools or teams that you're using?
Yeah, good question. For the first point, with letting the kids ride some of these unbroke horses, any horse that I don't own, I don't let any of these kids ride, just simply from a business standpoint. And I know my owners wouldn't be overly thrilled if I were throwing them on there. So I'll mention that in case any of my owners are listening. But no, when we go to the shows, we're required with the YEDA group to bring a certain amount of horses based on a certain amount of riders that we bring. So I want to say off the top of my head, every 6 riders is required to bring 1 horse. So typically I'll bring 3, 4, maybe 5 horses to a horse show. And the ones I got, I'm very fortunate. I got some good retired reiners. One horse is more of a pleasure type animal, but the group I get to bring are pretty good. I got they got their flaws, of course. That's why they're lesson horses, but they're all very safe, and good animals to be around, and they handle all that stuff real good.
I would imagine that coming from the reining industry, you're around a lot of really great horses that probably need new careers once their reining career ends, or whatever, they're transitioning into the next aspect of their life, and it's teaching kids how to ride. And I'd imagine you come across some pretty nice, quiet, safe, great horses for kids to learn on, being in the reining industry and around all these people and knowing all these horse trainers. And so.
Yeah, for sure. I've got the opportunity to get several of them. Although I'll tell you, with today's horse market going the way it's going, what used to be a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 lesson, it's hard to price those under $10,000 anymore. I mean, quiet and safe is selling quite high, and pretty soon it's either you got to raise prices or it's not going to work.
Isn't it insane right now? I went to the futurity because I was trying to get my horse back to Colorado. She was in Oklahoma, and the sale prices, I mean, $50,000 to $150,000 was what those yearlings were going for. I wouldn't have been able to afford my yearling had they put her in the sale. I thankfully bought when, she wasn't fed up and worked, and, she was just living in a pasture. That was the only way that I would have been able to afford her. The sale prices were insane. I mean, it's really exciting for the horse market. I'm glad to see it thriving. And, while we're in the middle of a pandemic and I'm super thankful that we're doing as well as we are, but oh my gosh, those prices are.
It's like a whole different industry right now. It's crazy how it's changed just in the past couple of years. I mean, you were shopping for horses 2 years ago, and now they're so much more expensive for the same horse 2 years later. It's a good thing, I guess, in the long run, but it's definitely an interesting time in the horse industry.
It's good to sell. It's a little rough to buy.
For sure. So let's kind of bounce over to the reining portion of your business, because like you said, you are an NRHA professional and you are competing at all the top shows in the country on top of your very busy coaching schedule. You've worked for quite a few legendary trainers, one of them being Sean Flaherty. How long were you there? What was it like training under him? I mean, he's definitely going down in the history books as one of the best,
Yeah, that was a good time. Worked there for well over 3 years, somewhere in that range, and got to see a lot of really, really phenomenal animals. Just a couple of studs that I remember. in my time there, like when I first started, there was Shine Chick Shine, Whiskey and Diamonds, East the Door, Blue Collar Tag was there, Central Town Fly Guy. I'm missing a lot of great, Spook's Got a Whiz. I mean, I'm missing some other great ones. I remember Gun of Trash came in for a little bit, getting ready for an FEI event. The first day I worked there, old KR Little Conquistador was in, and that was my job. I got to ride him around. That was pretty darn cool because he was getting him ready for an FEI. There were some great animals. So that was just unbelievable to be around those animals every single day, kind of see how they the younger ones developed up into what they were and go from there. The training, I soaked up as much as I could, but as a younger person, I think I wish I could go back knowing what I know now and relearn everything I learned, because I know how much more I would been grasping there. So I every opportunity I get, I try to go over and ride with him. It's just difficult to get, with a busy schedule. It's hard to get time to get off the farm and go ride. But he's been a great mentor and help to me. Certainly I've called him up with a lot of business or life questions because I know he's been there, he's done that. And if he personally hasn't done it or seen it, he knows about 10 or 15 other guys that he's watched through the years have the same dilemma, be that a question about, we built our facility and so I called him with a lot of barn questions, arena questions, that, or setting up a business, simple little exchanges with different owners that kind of weren't heated, but, they how do you handle this dilemma right here? Do you make a big deal out of this, or you kind of take the short end of the straw on this problem? So him and his family have all been really good people to be around and helpful, and I can't thank them enough for everything. It was a good time over there.
And talk about horsepower. I'm sure being that, young and you don't even realize, like, you're just walking into a whole barn full of level 4 champion horses. Whether they were already, winning everything, or if they were just coming twos that were going to be, futurity prospects. Couldn't imagine having all that horsepower right there, just like waiting for you. Did you go out on your own after Florida, or did you go elsewhere?
Yeah, so I got married in my second year there. So my wife was working on north end of Columbus, and I was working in Springfield. So that's about, we got an apartment 40 minutes in the middle. So I worked a year driving back and forth like that. And it was just kind of a lifetime, it's time and we gotta kind of set things out and get things started. I don't know if you ever truly feel you know enough or you're truly prepared to start your own business. But as far as like the time of life, stage of life, it was kind of time to get things started. And fortunately, I was able to find a farm up near where my parents are from and where I grew up. So I was able to lease a barn, really nice facility up there. And we spent 5 years in that facility before we were able to build our own.
Now, I'm sure everybody can probably relate to going out on their own, and it's a whole new world, especially coming from, you were literally at one of the top barns in the country and around some of the most expensive horses in the country and the best horses, and then you're going out on your own. How did you adjust to, starting your own business and having to go out and find clientele and horses and build up your program to get that reputation of, send your horses here, send your non-pros here, all of that. But literally every young trainer goes through.
Yeah, that's a great question. Couple words of advice I give to those thinking of starting your own business. First off, don't burn bridges. Every single one of my former bosses, Ollie, Jared, and Sean, I made sure I left on a high note. All three of them were invited to my wedding. Only two could come, but like I had them at my wedding. I'm close with all of them. Heck, I had Ollie out to the farm just this last summer to do a clinic seminar with my team, and like I said, I'm with Sean fairly frequently. I always try to reach out to Jerry whenever I head out towards Texas, which I don't get out that way enough, but I always make sure to reach out to him. So don't burn bridges. Along that note, Don, he's got 52 stalls in his barn or something. That's what he had when I was there. It might have changed since then, but he would reference some of his excess customers, like, hey, this horse isn't fitting me. It's not a level 4 horse. Why don't you go down to Keith Ceddia down the road? He's not too far. He used to work for me. I can vouch for him. I can't tell you how many customers have come from Sean, and a lot of those have turned into being great horses in my career or great owners in my career. Maybe the one horse that didn't make Sean a level 4 horse, maybe that owner had another horse and that turned into a big horse for me or something. So a lot of networking there. I mean, along with the not burning bridges, is make sure you're ethical. For instance, price sheets. I fill out a price sheet because I know if I'm going to go do business somewhere, I'd like to know how much I'm going to get a bill for and not be surprised and stuff like that. I think some of it's common sense for sure, but doing the right thing goes a long ways. Repeat customers, references are huge, and you get a negative influence or negative whatever. It goes pretty quick. People are going to hear about you and not in a good way. And I'd rather be, even if I'm selling a horse and I'm going to tell you kind of the warts and all, you know what I mean? And people appreciate, they might not buy my horse when I tell them the negative things, but I guarantee you nobody's ever said that Keith Ceddia lied to him selling a horse. So that's something I value quite a bit. Some other things with going out on your own, I think diversification is huge. Talking about our great showmen, we all know the top 20, 30, 40 trainers in our industry, and they probably win enough in the show pen that it pays, their mortgage and all that. But, there's, I don't know how many hundreds of NRHA trainers or young trainers in other disciplines that aren't known. So that tells you a showing's probably not winning you enough money. So that's why I started the lessons. That's why I started a team. My first team was actually an IEA team just because that was the only organization I knew. And I did that because it worked through the winter so I could teach lessons because some of the horses go home during the winter. So it was a way of getting competition going in the evening. So doing the YEDA, the showing, we don't do a ton of boarders, but we have done that at times. And when you first start, you take any horse that calls your phone number. So like there's Arabs, there's some of these field horses, 30-day things that would try to kill you, but fortunately I've gotten to a point where I can reference them elsewhere. And just focus on the horses that I really truly loved with the reiners.
That brings up such a good point in like something that I'm constantly advocating for, whether it's on the podcast or writing or just because I am the non-pro. I am the person that, I can't afford a $300,000 yearling and, putting him in training with the top of the top, but it kind of goes off of what you were just saying with the diversity. I think we forget that the non-pros are the people who are paying these bills for everybody. And it just really makes me happy to hear you saying stuff like that, because you are making sure that non-pros are learning and they're getting an education and you're able to help them with their horses, whether that's 30 days or they're with you for 3 or 4 years before they buy another horse, or if they're part of your YEDA team. And, I think we forget as a society, like as an industry, not even just the reining, not the cow horse, whatever. I think as an industry that, we need to remember all of the people who are supporting this industry and not just the top horses with the top trainers.
For sure. And that's an ethic that I think was built into me a long time ago when I worked for Ollie and rode with Ollie. And he would always say that, his lesson kids were just as important or more than the person that has a horse in training. Dude, I can think of multiple kids I've had come through my barn and they take a weekly lesson. And that's all they ever did, just take a lesson. Some of them showed, some of like on my YEDA team, I had one girl that she never showed a single time, but she rode with me for at least, I know she was in middle school, so she at least rode with me for 5 years every single week, and if you do the math on how much that adds up, that's quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, you got to take care of the people, and you never know what what, where that'll go. There's so many, for instances of, hey, this girl's been taking a lesson with me, and then they say, hey, I got a good friend that rides reiners, and then they come over, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's 2 or 3 horses in my barn that otherwise I would have had no contact with. The other one that I thought was kind of funny while you're saying that is a lot of times the trainers, when we get together, we get going in a little bit of trainer jargon and all that, and kind of cowboying around a little bit. And got to remember, when you're at a horse show, that's literally your office. I mean, you got to make sure that you're putting on a good image. For my barn particularly, we want to make sure we're presenting a family friendly barn. So we at the shows, we watch our language. We don't have alcoholic beverages at the stalls. We try to make sure it's a good environment. And sometimes I hear trainers saying things that, that rider, I'm looking for a horse for a rider, and I need something that a monkey could ride, or something like that. And I hear that phrase all the time. And I always kind of think, well, I hope your owner's not standing there listening to that, because they probably don't appreciate being called a monkey.
I think that's something that's so important in the horse industry. It's just, reputation is everything. And it's amazing how quickly you can make or break your reputation. But, I also think that something it seems like you're doing a phenomenal job at is just exposing those kids that, maybe just started with a weekly lesson to another part of the horse industry than just lessoning. Because, I get a lot of kids that I talk to, and they want to ride, but they have no idea that this whole other part of the horse world exists where you can go and show and own your own horse and things like that. So do you have a lot of kids that start lessoning with you and then eventually work up to showing and either owning or leasing or anything like that? Or do they mostly just stick with lessoning and YEDA?
For sure, you get a little bit of it all, but I'd say probably out of every 10 kids that come, you get 1 out of 10 that's going to go on and get a horse, or start showing, maybe just leasing. I lease out my lesson horses in the summer, take them to the shows. They know they're not going to be the most competitive rider in the class, but just to get them to an actual NRHA show. And I can't tell you how many times that's developed from, wow, I'm loving this, and they get hooked, and then they want to go buy a real reiner, one that they can go be competitive on. Heck, I got one boy, he rode with me for years. Then he started summer apprenticing with me. Then he took a full-time job with me, and he's still going at it. He's now working for an NRHA professional, trying to see if this is what he wants to do for a career. And he's more than got the tools to do it, but it is very cool, because it all started with riding these lesson horses around. And I mean, I remember at the time we were just trying to teach a horse how to canter, let alone learn what a lead is. And now he's good enough to make himself a business,
I think that's huge. You're helping kind of grow the next generation of riders. And I think we can all agree that, without that next generation, our industry is going to, dwindle down. And, finding a way to get kids involved, because not everybody can afford $100,000 show horse that you can go take to the Derby or whatever. And so I think that's huge that you're helping, they're getting the solid education. I mean, you've come from the best. You're teaching what you've learned throughout all of your years of working with these incredibly talented trainers. And now you're able to take that education and apply it in your own way, and then teach this next generation of kids, like, how to ride, even if, they might be riding a lesson horse, or they might be leasing a lesson horse, but the education that they're getting is just insane.
For sure, and I really enjoy that part. So the way kind of I work is like I like to see problems and try to find solutions. I get very bored doing the same thing over and over again, which is why the horses are great for me. I love to take a horse, identify my problem, and then try to come up with or find my best solution, my best path to get that animal to do something. And you would think it would necessarily be easier taking that to humans, but sometimes I find that a little harder, to put your thoughts into a human head to have them to execute the same thoughts. But I like to look at lessons through that problem solving lens. I'm probably not the best at sitting there and really getting after them. Like, hey, your shoulders aren't square enough. Hey, your elbows, sit up taller, like form and all that. Of course, that's incredibly important for what we do. But my favorite part is diagnosing. Hey, shoot, if you get your horse with his nose a little bit tipped to the left, you'll help that shoulder stand up to the right. So maybe you can catch that lead on that horse that wants to drop in and pull. I just really enjoy the kind of communicating that part of the ride, and a little bit like to take it into, the training side, but more just understanding the mechanics of a horse. And I always tell the kids, it's really not that hard to ride the perfect horse. The only problem is I don't know too many perfect horses, and particularly in the YEDA or the IHSA or whatever, I won't say there's no perfect horse. And so at that point, then it becomes a lot more difficult. So if we can learn how to make my flawed animal or tough horse a little bit more correct or a little bit closer to being perfect, then sitting up and lifting your chin up and putting your shoulders back becomes a lot easier when you can feel comfortable and in control.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And like you said, the body position, all of that, even though in the reining, which I came from the all around world, so I'm kind of loving this whole not having to keep my elbows in and sit perfectly still and, like all that. Like I like just being able to ride, but I'm so thankful for that background because it did teach me how to be a quiet rider and a soft rider. But you're right. Like once you understand the mechanics of the horse and you can kind of feel what you're aiming for, it's a lot easier to just sit there and relax and get your body back where it needs to, for sure.
Especially for catch riding. I mean, I've never been a great catch rider, and I showed IHSA, and it made me realize I'm not a great catch rider. And it also taught me so much just about the feel, because, every horse has a different feel, and you have to know what to look for when you get on that horse and know what to figure out about them to make them go. But this is totally off topic from what we're talking about. But before we end, I have to ask. So last year at the Quarter Horse Congress, you showed in the freestyle reining, and you were in I'm assuming, Ohio football uniform, helmet, pads, everything. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I can't imagine doing a reining pattern with the football helmet on.
Well, that is the Ohio State University that we're talking, the Buckeyes.
Jill, you can't mix the two. Ohio people love their football. You got to say
well, I'm
Ohio.
from Florida, and I the Ohio football uniform on.
Shoot. Well, yeah. So actually, this Congress was actually a whirlwind for me. This was there's more story to that than you realize. So my week started out really good. I won the novice horse 2 on that same horse, Cash in the Trash, phenomenal horse. And as my other classes were all going really well. My owners, I think every single horse and rider I took, I think I had 10 horses and 9 riders. I think every single person placed in the top 15. So it was a phenomenal Congress going. I got my last horse through my last non-pro through the gate. And I was also dealing with an infection on my leg. I'd been kicked a while back. And so I had an infection on my leg. I'd already been to the doctor, was on antibiotics, but my leg was turning colors, so I needed to get my last rider through the gate. And I was like, I'm going to run down to the hospital real quick, get some IVs, and I'll be back for my show in the open the next day. And this was Monday night. And I run in there. I was expecting to get out. Well, sure enough, they hold me and they won't release me because they needed me to run on IVs for the rest of the week. I got out Thursday night. I had to get my horse back into Congress Friday and then get him shown on Saturday. So it was a whirlwind and getting everything put together. It took a real team to get that put together. Big shout out to Laura Scholler, who's Robin Schuler's wife, and Laura helped me with my choreography and everything. And so she was a huge help for getting everything organized those last few minutes. But the show was a blast. I mean, I did not feel as prepared as I typically would, as you can imagine. But I will say showing in a helmet definitely constricts your viewing. I was planning on throwing the football, like tossing it up and down a few times during, but I wasn't confident with my where I was and my sight, so I just held on to it. But there's actually one point, there's a guy running around dressed up like Brutus, the Buckeye, and he's running around cheering on the crowd and all that. And I didn't know it. I near ran him over. I came really close to him, but I didn't know it until I watched the video. He was in the helmet blocked my peripheral, and I didn't see how close I got to him. So that was kind of funny. No, it looked like I meant to get that close, but that was an accident.
Was that your first time competing in the freestyle, or do you typically do it?
No, so that's actually my fourth one. I last year, or pre-COVID, the last Congress we had, I did one that was really special to me. It was actually with my daughter, who was 3 at the time. We had a guy at my church. He changed the words from Trace Atkins' song, "And She Thinks We're Fishing," to "And She Thinks We're Just Riding," and really fun one. So that one's by far the most special ride I've ever had, getting to compete with my daughter there. And we finished second that year. The year before we did a Michael Jackson routine, and the year before was my first time doing it, and it wasn't all that hot, but we did Radioactive by Imagine Dragons, but it wasn't so hot.
Before we end this call, the freestyle is fascinating to me. I was just at the Denver Stock Show and watched the invitational freestyle that Sherry Schwarzenberger won. And it's so much, oh my gosh, so much fun. I love the freestyle, but the freestyle is very different from regular reining stuff. And can you kind of talk about your process? Because not only is it costume, music, I mean, there's certain, you get marked for creativity. You have so many maneuvers that you have to do, and you have to do it in a certain time frame. I mean, there's a lot of planning that goes into a freestyle routine. It's not just grab a costume and pick some music and go do some spins and circles.
For sure, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert at it. I'm still learning the art there, and that's one reason I've collaborated with Laura Scholler. She's very good, and she's put together a number of riders, and as well as won the freestyle at Congress herself once or twice. So I get some help in it. But my philosophy on it is I don't have a lot of the trick rides. You know what I mean? There's a lot of guys doing horses laying down, horses going without a rider, a lot of creative things that's outside of my expertise. So I've kind of gone with the philosophy, if I'm going to beat those guys, I need to beat them with pure horsepower. So that's kind of where I've found horses or had horses in my barn that are high level open horses, so I can compete against some of these horses that are doing bridleless things and that sort of thing. And the crowd goes wild for all those tricks. So if I'm going to get the crowd to go wild, I got to do something huge as far as a reiner goes. There's a lot of, getting the music to flow with the theme. I think, I've never gone over the top on costume, though I'm not opposed to it. I just haven't had the routine that needed to, I guess. But it's by far tricky, because the other part is the warm up is completely different. At the Quarter Horse Congress, I can speak to a little more, but it's not in the same arena we've competed at all week in the reining. They make you go home for a couple of days before you can come back in. The warm up, before we're warming up with all reiners, now all of a sudden there's a bunch of pleasure horses and all around, and to a reiner it feels chaotic in that warm up environment.
Overhang.
Oh, no kidding. And the dirt the night before, there was a PBR in it, so the dirt's not quite what you would expect, and it changes up from, we get one rehearsal in the morning, we get 5 minutes to go and rehearse our routine and then get out of the arena, and it's very difficult, very, very, very hard setup for those horses. And I've been at a lot of big shows, and I'll tell you, the energy in that arena with the crowd is something different. I've seen horses not handle that. Like you go in, and especially because the people aren't all reiners, so they'll cheer at times that maybe you aren't expecting it. Like you're maybe in the middle of a rundown, you haven't stopped yet, you're expecting to cheer after the stop, and they're cheering before you get there. One horse I took in my first year, I just loped in and they start cheering. He's like, "Whoa, what was that?" And he jumped on me, and then he settled back in, and we were okay. But the other thing that's really interesting on the timing of it is, at least the way I try to run the freestyle is kind of upbeat, keeping time with that. Whereas in your think of all your great reining runs, we stop, we hesitate, we prepare that first step in the spin. We take our time, let our horse, get his body in the right position for whatever, or low pops or whatever. And the freestyle, you're actually on a timer, basically. You got 4 minutes, but if you're going to be at a certain location in your song, you better know your rhythm. So you're not only remembering a pattern that's not like all the other patterns, and you got to be keeping track of where the music is, and then trying to keep your animal relaxed as your brain's moving a little quicker than normal.
Gosh, I can imagine that energy of the arena and just the adrenaline and the excitement and all of it. It's funny, though, that you say that, because I didn't even think about the fact that people are probably cheering in really random parts of a pattern, especially for people who are very familiar with the reining and go to regular reining events quite often. And when I was at the stock show for the freestyle, I brought a bunch of my English friends who, they do the jumping stuff, and they're not used to any kind of cheering. They're used to the golf clap and maybe a whistle, and they are just screaming their heads off at the most random parts of the pattern, because they are just they're loving it. They're like, this is so cool. There's spotlights, there's costumes, there's horses at liberty doing the tricks, like you were saying. I mean, there's a little bit of everything. So yeah, I didn't think about that, but that could easily throw someone off, or a horse throw them off their game or their focus, because they're not used to noise at certain parts.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll take my own ride, like same animal that was strong enough in the NRHA class to mark a 220 and win in the ancillary class. He wasn't, the stops weren't the same quality. The spins weren't the same quality. There's little differences. Your horse is going to kind of sense, and it is going to throw things off. And then as a rider, you got to kind of have a short memory and keep going. You can't dwell on the past there, because if you do, you're going to be off your next rhythm. So it throws a little bit more deviation into the ride than normal. But I enjoy that. I wouldn't say freestyle is one of those things I just focus on and really work. It's not my goal every year. I just really enjoy and have a lot of fun with it. And if you can make money doing it, why not? But I love doing it, because it is a rush. And I'll tell you that crowd energy is a lot of fun.
It's got to be really nice after going and doing the same reining routines over and over and over again to change it up and just have fun and do whatever it is you want to do. Before we go, kind of going back to regular reining stuff, is there a memory that really just sticks out to you? It's just one of the biggest parts of your career, and just a memory that sticks with you throughout the years?
Yeah, and going back real quick, you said something that made me think about with the difference of patterns. I do look at those freestyle runs kind of like schooling. I don't want to do anything that's going to negatively make my animal worse in the future. And I did that one time and where I had a horse and I did, too many lead changes in the middle on it, just keeping the crowd going, and just didn't like the residual effects on my animal. So that really got my brain thinking, how can I use this ride to make my animal a better horse? Maybe make them have a pause in a place that they don't normally pause. Maybe instead of a roll back and lope out, maybe I do like a spin and a half and lope out, or send them in a different direction. So I do think if you're using your freestyle creativity, you can have fun and make it productive for that animal for the future, which I think is also something worth noting. But then going to your question about, special memories, for sure there's those freestyle runs. Those are pretty special. But I got to put this year's Congress win up there. That was huge. But I'll never forget one of my early years of working for Sean. I can't remember if it was my first or second year working there. I was fortunate enough to get one back in the fraternity finals at Congress. That was huge. And I'd never been able to do something like that. And the same horse earlier in that year had won a 30 down at the Clayton Woosley down in the Kentucky Horse Park. And then the other one I'll never forget, and it's kind of ended in a tragedy, I suppose, but My dad bought me a yearling, or I guess it was a 2-year-old, and I trained him up, and that was right when I started my business. So it was he was investing in me, and we did really well. We won a lot that year, but we made the fraternity finals, the level 1 finals, and we run out there, and my heart's pumping so big. I run out there, and there's 5 judges' chairs instead of the normal 3, and I looked at the wrong judge's chair, and I said, "Whoa, 4 foot early." And you stop before the marker. That's a 2-point penalty, and 2 point per judge. And at the end of the day, I ended up, I think they brought 15 back, and I was like 14th or 13th place. I was low. But if you add back in those penalty points, I think I was second. And so I like to tell my kids, the good runs I remember that run. That was probably 6. It might have been 8 years ago. I remember that run more vividly today than I do my runs where I've won. And I tell the kids that was the most expensive 4 foot that I've ever seen. That was probably about $1,000 a foot.
Hey, but I bet you never made that mistake ever again.
You know what? You are correct. I have not stopped before a marker. In fact, I usually am probably going too far.
It's one of those bad experiences we talked about in the beginning. You'll remember that forever.
That's right. No, and yeah, you got to learn from your mistakes, but I mean, that's part of the fun about this is you do live for another day. You can't approach every run like it's your last run and your life depends on it. I mean, it's important. Don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, this is just horse show, and life goes on.
There's always going to be another horse show. I wish I could go back and tell 16-year-old me this when I 2 years in a row messed up in the World Show finals and thought it was the end of my career. Nothing was ever going to happen right again. And now I look back and I'm just like, it's just another horse show. It just happened to be, you got a bigger trophy.
That's right. It's all perspective.
Yeah. So, thank you. I loved this interview. I had so much fun getting to learn more about you and your life and your career and what you're doing for the industry. And I could probably go on for another hour, but I'm sure that you are busy and you want to get back to your horses because you have a full training business going on. So before we leave, can you go ahead and tell people where they can find more about your business or anything like that? You're on social media?
Sure. For the most part, I'm just on Facebook, Ceddia Performance Horses, and that's spelled Ceddia. But Ceddia Performance Horses, and that's how you look me up. My phone number's on there as well. But yeah, we're in Centerburg, Ohio, smack dab in the middle of Ohio.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. I truly appreciated this interview, and I'm sure our listeners loved it too.
Yeah, it was so great to talk with you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you guys for tuning in to the Ride Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and please be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow Horse and Rider Magazine on social media and find us at horseandrider.com.
If you guys have any questions or comments, please be sure to hit us up at horseandrider@equinenetwork.com. We want to hear from you guys.
And if you like what you're listening to, be sure to leave us a review on iTunes.